right, guys, welcome to week 2. Week 2 is all about division, and specifically long division. Before we went out on our extended spring break, we were working on different ways to divide. And right before we went out, we were working on repeated subtraction, more specifically taking out more than one group of the divisor. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go over that a little bit. Just as kind of a refresher because it's been a while before I move into the steps of long division. Okay, so I'm going to be working from this page of examples. It's the long division page 2, and I'll just be using notebook paper to write the problems out. Okay, so the first one is 68 divided by 4. Okay, so let's just remind ourselves the parts of the division problem. Okay, so inside this house is our dividend. The dividend is the total amount of something. Okay, so if we were talking about sweet tarts, this would be 68 total sweet tarts. Okay, the number that's in, I call the driveway in front of the house, that's called our divisor. Okay, that's what we're dividing by. Okay, and that divisor can be one of two things. It can be either the number in each group, which would be like 4 sweet tarts in one group, or it could be the number of groups. Okay, that would mean 4 groups of sweet tarts. Okay, it just depends on what your word problem is saying. Okay, for these problems, we're not so concerned about what that divisor means because we're not working on a word problem. Okay, but just so you know, when you are working on division problems within a word problem, that divisor can mean one of 2 different things. Okay, so depending on what that is, your quotient that goes on top is going to be the opposite. So if my divisor is the number in each group, then my quotient is going to be the number of groups and vice versa. Okay, all right, so here's what we did for partial quotients. Okay, what we did was we turned our house into what we kind of call as a hangman. Kind of looks like the hangman game. Okay, now our divisor is 4. Like we said a while ago, that's how many we're taking out each time. With repeated subtraction, I could repeatedly subtract 4 from 68 until there's nothing left. But as my dividends get bigger, that's going to get harder and harder to do. Okay, because you're going to be here for a while. So instead, we take multiple or more than one group of 4 out. Okay, so since we only have a 2-digit number, what I always say to start with is just try 10. Try taking 10 groups of 4. Okay, so I'm going to do that. 10 groups of 4 is equal to 40. Okay, so instead of just taking one group of 4, we're taking 10 groups of 4, and that is 40. Okay, so I'm going to take that 40 out of the 68. Okay, and that leaves me with 28. Okay, so now if I think about my multiples of 4, okay, I know that I can take 7 groups of 4, and that equals exactly 28. Okay, so now I need to take that 28 out, and that leaves me with nothing left over. Okay, now from here, I need to take my partial quotients. This is the number of groups that I took out. Okay, the 10 and the 7. I need to combine those 2. That gives me 17. That becomes my quotient. Okay, quotients always go at the top, on top of the house. Okay, now this is not the traditional method of dividing. And parents, if you're listening, you chances are were not taught this method. I was not taught this method. Okay, the state of Texas does require us to teach this because not all of our students' brains work the same. For very few kids, this is the most efficient method. They latch onto it and it works very well for them. For most kids, the long division, or the way that we were taught, is going to be the most efficient method for them to use. And that's what we're going to get into. Okay, so from here, Okay, this was just a reminder of what partial quotients is. This is partial quotients. I'll write that at the top. Once you become a pro at long division, okay, you can decide that you don't want to do it this way, and that is perfectly fine, okay? We just have to provide you with more than one way to divide, okay? And then you can decide which way is best for you, okay? All right, so now the steps to long division can be quite difficult if you have trouble remembering sequence or parts that go in order. Okay, so to help you with that, I've kind of come up with this acronym. I know some people use different ones. I use, does McDonald's sell burgers rapidly? Okay, the most important thing is to remember the order of those letters, because that is the order that we are going to divide in. Okay, it is very, very important to keep those steps in order. That's why we've come up with this, does McDonald's sell burgers rapidly? Okay, now the D in does means to divide. The M in McDonald's means to multiply. The S for sell means to subtract. The B for burgers means to bring down. And the R for rapidly means to repeat. Okay, another common one that I've heard used a lot is daddy, mama, sister, brother, and rover. Okay, that's perfectly fine to use as well, whatever helps you remember the steps. Okay, so I'm going to be referring back to this to make sure that we're going in order, and we make sure that we're doing all of the steps in those order. That is very, very, very important. Okay, so I'm going to use this same problem so that you can kind of see the difference between the two methods and how you'll still get the same answer. Okay, but I'm going to slide it up so that's kind of out of our way for right now, and then I'll pull it back down whenever we're finished. Okay, so we're going to set the problem up the same way. Okay, so my 68 is going to go inside the house. Okay, this time I'm not going to bring this side down. Okay, we're not going to make the little hangman structure. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like this. Okay. Now, off to the side, I'm going to write my letters, okay? And the letters are coming from here, okay? The does McDonald's sell burgers rapidly. And the more that you hear that, the more that you say that, the more that you see that, the faster it'll come to you, okay? All right, so the first letter, the does, remember that represents division, okay? So we're always going to start with this first digit in my dividend, okay? And I like to write my facts off to the side so that I don't get lost, okay? So that I can keep track of all of it, okay? So my first division fact, I'm gonna pretend like this 8 is not here, okay? So for right now, I just wanna divide 6 divided by 4. So I'm going to write that over to the side. 6 divided by 4. Okay. Now, I've been stressing all year, and I know some of the other teachers have as well, how important it is to know those multiplication facts, because if you know your multiplication facts, you automatically know your division facts. Okay. So remember, we're taking groups of 4. Okay. So I'm dividing 6 divided by 4. That means I need to take as many groups of 4 out of 6 as I can. Okay, if you're not comfortable with your math facts, you can use Old Faithful, our hashtag, and if your parents don't know what this is, you might want to show them. Okay, we're using the pound sign or the hashtag, and that's just a tool to help us fill in multiples if we're not familiar with our math facts. Okay, so I'm going to fill it in with multiples of 4 because that's my divisor. Okay, so I have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, and 36. Okay, so I've got that there for me to look at. Okay, so I'm trying to take as many groups of 4 out as I can without going over 6. That's important. I can't go over that 6. Okay, well, if I take one group of 4, that gives me 4. okay? That is less than 6, so let's try to take 2 groups and see what happens, okay? If I take 2 groups of 4, that gives me 8. That's too much. That's greater than 6, so I can't use 2 groups. I can only use 1, okay? So I'm gonna put my 1 right here, okay? From here, I'm gonna take that 1 and it's gonna go up here because this is a quotient. These are quotients over here. All of these are quotients, okay? We're gonna be writing some more in a minute. Your quotients are here. Quotients always go on top of the house, okay? All right, so we just divided. Ta-da! Step 1 is done, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a little multiplication sign on the corner of my house. That's for the next step, okay? That's for multiplication, okay? And I like to use arrows because for me, I'm very much a visual learner. I need to touch and see exactly what I'm multiplying. So I draw arrows, okay? So I'm multiplying the 1 that I just put up here times my divisor of 4, okay? And we know that's gonna give us 4. That 4 is gonna come down right here. It's gonna go underneath the 6, okay? That's why I underline up here when I'm dividing. That kind of helps me see where I'm gonna put my 4, okay? I put it right underneath what I underlined, okay? So we've just multiplied, okay? My next step is to subtract, okay? So I need to take my 6 and subtract 4 from it, which leaves me with 2, okay? So we can mark that step off. We subtracted, okay? Now, the B is for bring down, okay? Here's what we're bringing down, okay? So remember earlier I said to ignore that 8 and not use it yet? Well, now it's back into play and we need to use it, okay? So we're gonna bring down this next digit. And it's very important to remember that you can only bring down 1 digit at a time. So when we get to 3-digit dividends and 4-digit dividends, you have to remember that you can only drop 1 down at a time. You can't skip and do 2 or 3 more, okay? You can only bring down 1 at a time. All right, so we can mark off the B. We're done with that. We brought down. Now, the R stands for repeat. Okay, and what I like to do is I like to draw an arrow back up, okay? Repeat means to come back and start the process all over with division, okay? Now, this part right here gets kind of confusing for kids, and it's just about the placement and what do I divide now? So after you've divided the first time up here, you won't divide from up here anymore. You're gonna be dividing from down here, okay? Because I have 28 left over. That is my new dividend. That's what I'm dividing by 4. And see, I'm using my arrows again, and I put a division sign next to it, okay? So off to the side over here, I'm gonna write 28 divided by 4, okay? No, you don't have to do this. This is just a way to keep things organized, okay? All right, so if you're not comfortable with your multiples of 4, okay, your division facts or your multiplication facts, use the hashtag. Draw that hashtag, fill it in with multiples of your divisor. In this case, it's 4, okay? And I can see, I can get exactly 28 right here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups right there, okay? So 28 divided by 4 is going to be 7, okay? So again, these are quotients. Okay, the quotient always goes on top of the house. So that 7 is going to come over here. Okay. All right, so we just divided for the second time. So I'm going to put a second check mark next to the D for division. Okay. Now I need to multiply. Okay. Here's another part where kids get confused. Okay. So I've got 2 digits up here. All right, but you're only multiplying the one that you just put up there by your divisor. Don't try to multiply 17 times 4. You can't do that because you've already multiplied the 1 times 4. We are only multiplying the 7 times 4, okay? 7 times 4 is 28, okay? So that 28 is gonna go down here, okay? So we've multiplied. Now I need to take my 28 and subtract 28 from it, and that leaves me with 0. Okay. Now, from here, I'm going to pull out another sheet that's in your packet. Looks like this. The 3 hints to know when I'm done dividing. And it has a different example underneath them. I'm not going to go over that one. I'm going to use our example that we're working on. Okay, so here are the 3 ways. Okay, if you satisfy 1, 2, and 3 here, then that means you're completely done dividing. Okay, so number 1, there is nothing left to bring down. Remember, we bring down from up here. Okay, there's nothing left over here. We've already brought this 8 down. There's nothing left to bring down. Okay, so I've satisfied number 1. Now number 2, my remainder. Remainder is at the bottom. Got to remember that. That's what's left over, or what remains. Okay, my remainder has to be smaller than my divisor. This is the divisor. Yes, it is. 0 is less than 4, so I've satisfied number 2. Now, number 3. All of the digits in the dividend have a digit above them. Here's our dividend. The 68 is our dividend, okay? Each digit has a digit on top of it, okay? So we have satisfied number 3 as well. That means that we are done dividing, okay? Now I need to check it, okay? So here's how I'm going to check it. We're going to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So now I'm going to take my 17, let's do it over here, and I'm going to multiply it by my divisor of 4 to see if I get my dividend of 68, kind of like a fact family. Okay, so 4 times 7 is 28, so I'm going to write my 8 and carry my 2. 4 times 1 is 4, plus the extra 2 is 6, okay? It matches. So I know that I did this correctly. Okay, so my answer for this division problem, my quotient is 17. Okay, there is no remainder. If you wanted to write with a remainder, it would be remainder 0. Okay, 17 remainder 0. Okay, remember, your quotient and your remainder are 2 totally separate things. Okay, all right, I will be back with some more practice problems. Thanks for tuning in.